The night was heavy with silence. A storm brewed somewhere above the Los Angeles skyline, but inside the marble mansion of the Monroes, darkness had already fallen. Mr. Monroe sat at the long oak table in his private office, cigar smoke curling around his sharp face. His black suit gleamed in the dim light. Across from him sat two men in sleek coats, Korean, calm, and unreadable. Between them lay a folder, thick and sealed with crimson wax. "This contract will unite our families," one of them said in a low voice. "The Kangs control Asia. You control the West. Together, no one touches us." Mr. Monroe smiled faintly. His gold ring clicked against the glass of whiskey. "And in return," he said, "you want my daughter." "Marriage is the cleanest way," the man replied. "Your enemies grow stronger. We can't protect you forever. Blood must bind business." A moment passed. Then, without hesitation, Mr. Monroe took the pen and signed. His signature was bold, final, and cruel. Outside the door, Rebecca Monroe stood frozen. She had only meant to bring her father his forgotten phone. Instead, she heard her own name traded like property. Her breath caught in her throat. The pen scratched, and with every stroke, her freedom disappeared. She stepped back quietly, the hallway spinning around her. Her heart raced so fast she thought it might burst through her ribs. "Dad can't do this," she whispered, clutching the railing. "He can't marry me off to some stranger." But deep down she knew he could, and he would. The next morning, sunlight poured over the mansion like nothing had happened. Rebecca sat at the breakfast table, dressed in a white silk robe, her long curls falling over her shoulders. The smell of coffee couldn't calm her nerves. Her father walked in, looking refreshed and victorious. He kissed her forehead like he hadn't just sold her future. "Good morning, princess," he said. She didn't answer. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. "Who are the Kangs?" she asked quietly. His gaze flicked to her. "Powerful friends," he said. "They've kept me alive more times than you know. Their son needs a wife, and this alliance will secure our empire." "Empire." Rebecca's voice broke into a laugh, sharp, bitter, trembling. "You mean your dirty deals, your smuggling, your lies?" His hand slammed the table, making her flinch. "Enough, Rebecca," he snapped. "Everything I've built, everything you have, it's because of those deals. You'll do your part. You'll marry Jamin Kong, and you'll thank me one day." She stood, tears burning her eyes. "You're trading me like I'm your next shipment of diamonds." Mr. Monroe looked at her coldly. "Sometimes diamonds have to be placed in the right hands to shine." She stormed out before he could say more, her robe swirling around her legs. Upstairs, she locked herself in her room, shaking with rage. She had everything: money, fame, beauty. But in that moment, she'd never felt poorer. That night, she packed a small bag, passport, cash, her phone. She planned to run. But before dawn, her father's men were waiting. Two black cars idled outside the gate. The head bodyguard, Marcus, met her in the hallway. "You're not leaving, Miss Monroe," he said softly. "The boss's orders." She glared at him. "If you ever had a daughter, would you let this happen to her?" Marcus looked away. "The plane leaves in an hour. You should get dressed." The drive to the airport felt endless. Los Angeles glittered behind her like a city made of ghosts. She sat in silence, her tears drying into steel. When they arrived, a private jet waited, white and gold, with a crest she didn't recognize. Two dragons circling a sword, the Kong family symbol. A tall Korean man in a dark coat approached. His voice was deep, precise. "Miss Monroe, my name is Minji. I'm here to escort you to Seoul." Rebecca's lips curled into a small smirk. "Do I get to meet my future husband first? Or do I just say, 'I do' at the airport?" Minji didn't flinch. "You'll meet him when you arrive. Mr. Kong prefers privacy." Rebecca rolled her eyes and climbed the jet stairs, muttering, "Perfect, just perfect." Inside, the cabin was lavish cream leather seats, champagne on ice, soft music playing in Korean. Yet all she felt was anger pressing against her ribs. She stared out the window as the engines roared to life, the world below shrinking into clouds. Hours later, the sun had set again. The plane touched down in Seoul, where night lights glittered like jewels scattered across the land. Rebecca stepped out, cold air kissing her face. Black cars waited on the tarmac. As she entered one, the city lights blurred past like streaks of gold. Everything was unfamiliar. Signs she couldn't read, faces that looked past her, a language that flowed like wind. Finally, the car stopped in front of a mansion so large it could swallow her father's estate whole. Black marble walls, glass windows, a fountain shaped like a dragon. The doors opened. A man stepped out of the shadows. He was tall, dressed in a black suit that fit him perfectly. His jaw was sharp, his expression calm, his eyes dark and unreadable. Tattoos peeked from under his collar, the only sign of rebellion in an otherwise disciplined man. Rebecca froze. So this was him, the man her father sold her to. "Rebecca Monroe," he said, his voice deep and smooth as silk. "Welcome to Seoul." Her breath hitched. "So you're the one I'm supposed to call my husband?" He studied her for a long moment before replying, "Not unless you want to. I don't force what doesn't want to stay." Something in his tone disarmed her, gentle yet powerful. He extended his hand. "I'm Jaemin Kong. I don't expect love. Just honesty." Rebecca hesitated, then took his hand. It was warm, firm, real. And in that single touch, she felt something shift. Not acceptance, not peace, but a quiet spark, the kind that could either build a fire or burn everything down. As they walked into the mansion together, the heavy doors closed behind them with a low, final thud. The deal was sealed, and Rebecca's new life, one born from betrayal and destined for chaos, had just begun. The Kong mansion was a palace made of glass, shadows, and silence. From the outside, it shimmered like heaven. Inside, it felt like a cage built by gods who loved control. Rebecca followed Jaemin through the grand hallway, her heels echoing against polished marble. Every corner glowed with wealth. Silver statues, velvet chairs, and gold chandeliers that glittered like they were mocking her. Two maids bowed as she passed, their eyes avoiding hers. Everything smelled faintly of jasmine and smoke. Somewhere, a piano played soft notes that almost sounded sad. Jaemin stopped before a set of double doors. He turned to her, his face calm and unreadable. "This will be your room. You'll find everything you need." Rebecca folded her arms. "Everything except my freedom." A flicker passed through his eyes. Surprise, maybe amusement, but he said nothing. "I didn't ask for this," she said, her tone sharp. "My father didn't even tell me your name before signing my life away." Jaemin leaned slightly against the doorframe. "You think I asked for it? My father wanted power too. You and I are both collateral." Her anger softened just a little, enough for curiosity to slip through. "Then why agree?" His gaze lingered on her face. "Because peace costs more than pride. And maybe," he paused, a faint smile touching his lips, "because I wanted to see what kind of woman would glare at me like you just did." Rebecca blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her that way, not with authority, but with quiet challenge. He turned, opening the door. Inside, the room was breathtaking. Silk sheets, a balcony overlooking the city, fresh flowers arranged neatly by the window. Everything screamed luxury, but all she could feel was distance. "You'll have your privacy," he said. "This is a marriage on paper. Nothing more, unless you decide otherwise." He walked away before she could reply, leaving behind the faint scent of his cologne, dark and clean like rain before a storm. The first few days passed in slow confusion. Rebecca barely saw him. She woke to find breakfast trays waiting. Rice porridge, fruit, perfectly sliced meat. She spent hours wandering through the mansion, staring at portraits of old Korean men with cold eyes. Everywhere she went, people bowed. None of them spoke English. She began to feel like a ghost haunting her own life. At night, she'd sit by the balcony and watch the city lights. Seoul was beautiful, endless and alive, but it didn't feel like home. She'd think about Los Angeles, her mother's laughter, and the way her father used to hold her hand when she was little, before greed changed him. One evening, she heard footsteps outside her room. Curious, she followed them to the study. The The door was slightly open. Inside, Jamin sat behind a massive desk, sleeves rolled up, reading files under a golden lamp. His tattoos glimmered faintly along his arms, dragons and calligraphy symbols that danced with movement. He looked tired, not dangerous, just human. Rebecca pushed the door open. "Do you ever sleep?" He looked up, eyes narrowing slightly, then relaxed. "Not when I can think instead." She stepped inside. "You don't talk much, do you?" "I talk when there's something worth saying." "Well," she said, folding her arms, "I've got something worth saying. I'm not your decoration. I don't care who your family is or what they own. I'm not going to sit around and pretend this marriage is fine." Jamin tilted his head, amused. "Then don't pretend." His calmness irritated her more than shouting ever could. "You're impossible," she muttered. "Not impossible," he said quietly. "Just used to people who don't speak to me unless they're afraid." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was strange, almost peaceful. Rebecca sat down across from him, uninvited. "So tell me something, Jamin Kong. What does a mafia boss do all day in a mansion like this?" He smiled faintly. "Paperwork, strategy, stopping wars before they start. You expected blood and guns, didn't you?" "I expected chains," she admitted. He leaned forward. "Then you'll be disappointed. You can walk out that door anytime you like. But be warned, Seoul isn't kind to people who cross my father." There it was again, that quiet warning, not out of threat but concern. "Why are you so different from the stories I heard?" she asked softly. Jamin leaned back in his chair. "Because the stories never belong to the people who live them." Rebecca didn't reply. Instead, she found herself staring at his hands, strong, scarred, but gentle when he turned a page. She thought about how strange it was that someone so feared could look so lonely. Before she realized it, an hour had passed. They talked about cities, languages, and how he learned English by watching old American movies. When she laughed at his imitation of a cowboy accent, he looked genuinely pleased. For the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't feel trapped. Days turned into weeks. The house began to feel less like a cage, more like a secret universe. Jamin kept his word. He never crossed her boundaries. Instead, he quietly included her in his world. Dinners with his men, charity events, strategy meetings she didn't understand but pretended to. He started teaching her Korean phrases. She'd mispronounce them on purpose just to see the corner of his mouth lift in a half-smile. One evening, after a long meeting, he found her in the kitchen trying to cook ramen. "You're going to burn that," he said. "I'm not helpless," she replied, stirring the pot aggressively. He walked over, picked up the chopsticks, and turned off the stove. "Now you're not either hungry or dead." She glared, then burst into laughter. For a moment, they were just two people. Not mafia heirs, not victims of a deal. Just Rebecca and Jamin, standing in a kitchen that smelled like noodles and quiet happiness. "See," he said softly, "not all cages are cold." "Maybe," she whispered, "but I still want to fly." He met her eyes. "Then I'll teach you how." The air shifted, warm, magnetic. They both stepped back at the same time, unsure of what that spark meant. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept hearing his voice, calm and deep, saying he'd teach her how to fly. She walked out onto the balcony, the wind brushing her silk nightgown. Down below, Seoul glittered endlessly. Somewhere in that maze of lights, she knew danger was waiting. The world she'd entered wasn't safe. Not for her, not for him. But for the first time, she didn't care. She looked toward Jamin's window across the courtyard. The light was still on. He was probably still working, still carrying the weight of an empire he never asked for. She smiled faintly. "Maybe you're not the monster I thought you were," she whispered. "Maybe you're just human." Inside his study, Jamin looked up from his desk as if he'd heard her through the night. He glanced toward her balcony, saw her silhouette against the city lights, and something in his chest shifted. He closed the file he'd been reading, the name Monroe stamped across the top. He'd known from the beginning that Rebecca's father wasn't telling the whole truth, that the deal between their families was dirtier than anyone realized. And he knew one day the lies would catch up to them both. But for now, as the city slept beneath them, All he could think about was the woman who'd walked into his life like a spark in the dark. The woman who made even a Mafia prince feel something close to peace. Rain had fallen through the night, leaving the sky a misty silver when Rebecca woke. She sat up slowly, silk sheets sliding down her bare shoulders. The scent of jasmine lingered, soft but haunting. The scent of this house, this life she never chose. Through the balcony doors, she could see the Seoul skyline waking too. Neon lights fading into daylight, the hum of cars below, the faint cries of vendors setting up their stalls. The world outside looked free, moving, alive. But she wasn't part of it. Here, behind tall glass and guards at every gate, freedom was a rumor. Rebecca walked to the mirror and tied her curls up into a loose bun. Her nightgown slipped down her shoulder, and for a second, she studied her reflection. The girl staring back didn't look like the confident, fiery woman from Los Angeles. This one looked softer, quieter, lonelier. She sighed and reached for her robe. Downstairs, the morning meeting had already begun. Jaemin sat at the long dining table, flanked by two men, Dante and Minji, both dressed sharply in black. Documents were spread out before them, some stamped with red seals, others with photos of men she didn't recognize. When Rebecca entered, the room went quiet. Her satin robe shimmered under the light as she walked past them. Dante stood halfway, bowing slightly, but his eyes lingered longer than necessary. Jaemin noticed. "Eyes down, Dante," Jaemin said coldly, not looking up from his file. Rebecca hid a small smile. There was something oddly satisfying about how his tone changed when it came to her. She took a seat across from him. "Good morning, gentlemen. I see we're talking business again." Minji nodded politely. Dante smirked. "Always business, Mrs. Kong." She frowned. "Don't call me that." The air thickened. Jaemin finally looked up, his gaze sharp enough to slice silence in half. "She said don't call her that." Dante's smirk vanished. "Apologies, boss." Rebecca raised a brow. "I can handle my own battles, you know." "I know," Jaemin said quietly, returning to his files. "But some men only understand consequences." For a moment, their eyes met, hers bright with defiance, his steady with warning. It was an unspoken exchange, electric and complicated. Later that afternoon, Rebecca found herself wandering through the mansion again. She passed through endless hallways, the sound of rain still dripping from the rooftop gardens. Her heels clicked softly on the marble floors. Every wall had a story, oil paintings of the Kong family's ancestors, calligraphy scrolls with bold black strokes. She didn't understand the language, but the words looked powerful, sacred even. Eventually, she pushed open a pair of wooden doors and found herself in a greenhouse. Warm light filtered through the glass, touching every leaf, every petal. It was a secret garden of orchids, peonies, and white roses. She gasped softly. "It's beautiful." "It was my mother's," a voice said behind her. Rebecca turned. Jaemin stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled, holding a cup of tea. "She planted everything herself," he said, stepping closer. "When she died, I kept it alive." Rebecca looked around again, seeing the space differently now. Not just as beauty, but as memory. "You loved her a lot." He nodded once. "She taught me to listen before I speak, to protect before I fight." Rebecca smiled faintly. "That explains why you don't yell. You just look at people until they confess." A soft chuckle escaped him, rare, almost shocking. "You noticed." "I notice everything," she said playfully, running her fingers along a row of roses. "That's why I know you don't actually sleep when you say you do." He raised a brow. "And how would you know that?" "Because every night, the light in your study is still on when mine goes off." He didn't deny it. For a long, quiet moment, they stood among the flowers, two souls from opposite worlds, bound by a deal neither asked for. That night, dinner was different. Instead of the long, silent meals they usually shared, Jaemin invited her to sit beside him at the shorter end of the table. A bottle of red wine stood open, and soft jazz played from an old record player in the corner. Rebecca looked at him suspiciously. "You planning to poison me or charm me?" "Depends," he said calmly, pouring her a glass. Which one would work faster? She laughed genuinely this time. Careful, Jaemin. You're starting to sound human. He gave a half smile. Don't tell anyone. They ate in slow comfort. Between bites, they talked. About music, about their cities, about how she once snuck out of her father's mansion to watch street performers in New Orleans. He listened like every word she spoke mattered. When she mentioned her father, though, his expression changed. Not cruelly, but with a tension she couldn't quite place. Your father's name carries weight, he said, but not the kind that lasts long. Rebecca frowned. What do you mean? Let's just say there are people who want both our families erased. And they don't care who they hurt first. She set down her fork slowly. Are you saying I'm in danger? He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something new in his eyes. Not fear. Protection. You were in danger the moment your father made that deal, he said. But as long as you're under my roof, no one touches you. For a moment, she wanted to believe him. But that night, as she stood on her balcony watching the moon fade through drifting clouds, she noticed something that froze her blood. A figure moving near the outer gates, too still, too deliberate. Then a flash, metal glinting in the dark. She gasped and ran back inside. Jaemin was in his study when the alarm blared. A low, vibrating hum that shook the floor. He was already on his feet before the first guard shouted. Rebecca burst through the door, eyes wide. Someone's outside. I know. He cut in sharply. He reached for a gun from his drawer, tucking it into his coat. Stay here. Like hell I will, she snapped. Rebecca, he said, voice low but commanding. This is not Los Angeles. People here don't miss when they shoot. Stay. Inside. The tone in his voice made her heart stop. It wasn't anger. It was fear for her. Through the window, she saw dark figures scaling the fence. Shots cracked the night open. Guards shouted in Korean. Rebecca crouched by the wall, trembling. Within minutes, the chaos died down. Silence returned, heavy and strange. Jaemin came back, a small cut on his cheek, his shirt slightly torn. He was breathing hard. She ran to him. You're hurt. It's nothing, he said, wiping blood from his face. They were testing us. Next time, they won't miss. Who were they? Your father's enemies, he said darkly. And maybe mine. She looked up at him, her fear mixing with something else. Realization. So, this isn't just about family politics, is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he touched her arm gently. You should sleep. Rebecca stared at him for a moment, then whispered, How can I sleep when every shadow outside might be the end of us? He met her gaze, and something in his expression softened. Then don't sleep. Stay here. Her heart skipped. In your room. He nodded once. Just for tonight. His bedroom was dark, quiet, and surprisingly simple. No gold, no marble, just black sheets, a single lamp, and the faint smell of cedar. Rebecca sat at the edge of the bed, unsure what to do with her hands. Jaemin took off his jacket, revealing the tattoos running down his arms. Dragons, swords, and phrases inked in beautiful calligraphy. Those tattoos, she said softly. What do they mean? He looked down at them. Each one is a promise. Some I kept, some I broke. Rebecca hesitated. And me? Am I one of those promises? He turned to her, his voice quiet but deep. You're the one I didn't see coming. The words hung between them, charged and fragile. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant and slow. She shifted closer, her shoulder brushing his. He didn't move away. They sat there, listening to the rain, two strangers who were no longer quite strangers. And for the first time since she arrived in Seoul, Rebecca didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt seen. Rebecca woke up to the soft hum of the city. Warm sunlight slipped through the curtains, landing on her face. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The silk sheets, the faint cologne in the air, the quiet luxury, until the memory hit. She was in his bed. Her heart jumped. She sat up quickly, looking around. The other side of the bed was empty, perfectly folded. Jaemin was gone. Her mind raced. Had he touched her? Had something happened? but she was still fully dressed in his oversized black shirt, untouched. On the bedside table there was a tray breakfast, croissants, strawberries, coffee, and a note written in sharp Korean strokes. You were scared last night. Couldn't leave you alone. Jay. Rebecca frowned. He didn't even sign his full name. Typical. Still, her stomach growled, betraying her pride. She ate a few bites, telling herself she wasn't impressed. But the coffee tasted perfect, exactly the way she liked it. Later, she found Jae-min in the living room, sitting on the couch, reading something on his tablet. The morning light caught the edge of his jawline, sharp and calm, like nothing could ever shake him. You didn't have to carry me here, she said, crossing her arms. He looked up, his eyes unreadable. You were scared. I didn't think you'd argue about being safe. I don't like feeling vulnerable. He nodded slowly. Noted. She sighed, annoyed at his calmness. You're impossible. Jae-min put the tablet down and stood. Rebecca, I told you I don't want to fight with you. This situation is already complicated enough. She stared at him, her chest tightening. Complicated? You think this is complicated? I was forced to marry a stranger for business. I left my home, my mother, my friends. That's not complicated, that's cruel. He walked closer, his voice low. I didn't force you. But you didn't stop it either. That silence again. Heavy. Tense. Then he spoke, softer this time. You're right. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. She expected defense, not surrender. He stepped back, giving her space, and said, But if you're going to stay here, I want you to have your freedom. I won't lock you up. Just don't run. She frowned. Why not? Because if you do, he said quietly, they'll find you before I do. And trust me, you'd rather it be me. Her heart skipped. She didn't ask who they were. She just knew he meant danger. The next few days were oddly peaceful, almost normal. Jae-min worked all day in his office. She spent her time exploring the penthouse, reading, or staring out at Seoul's skyline. But sometimes, she'd catch him watching her. Not possessively, just with quiet curiosity, like he was studying her thoughts. One evening, she was on the balcony when he joined her with 2 cups of tea. I didn't ask for tea, she said. I didn't ask you to play that piano either, he replied with a slight smile. But I liked it. She took the cup despite herself. You're strange. So I've been told. There was a pause, long but not uncomfortable. Then she asked, Do you even want this marriage? He looked out at the city. No, but I won't dishonor it either. My father taught me that when a deal is made, you keep it, even if it burns. Rebecca turned to him. And what if I told you I don't want to be a deal? He looked at her, really looked. Then I'd find a way to make you something more. Her breath caught. He walked away before she could respond. That night, as she tried to sleep, she couldn't stop thinking about those words. Something more. What did that mean? Was it pity? Or something else blooming quietly between them? But before she could overthink it, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered in a whisper. Hello. A deep voice came through, American, rough, familiar. Rebecca, it's Marcus. You need to get out of there. Your father's in trouble. The Koreans weren't the only ones he made a deal with. Her heart stopped. What are you talking about? You're being watched, Marcus hissed. That marriage wasn't to protect you. It was to use you. They think your dad hid something in Seoul. Money, documents, something both sides want. Wait. Click. The call ended. Rebecca stared at the screen, panic rising in her chest. She turned slowly and froze. Jae-min was standing at the doorway, eyes dark. He'd heard everything. Who was that? He asked quietly. No one. He walked closer, his expression unreadable. Don't lie to me, Rebecca. She glared. You don't own me, Jae-min. I'm not trying to own you, he said, his voice low and dangerous now. I'm trying to keep you alive. Her pulse raced. Alive from what? He didn't answer. He just stared at her for a long moment, then turned away. Pack your things. We're leaving tonight. She blinked. What? Why? He faced her again. The soft calm she once saw in his eyes was gone. Because your father's enemies just landed in Seoul. The air in the penthouse turned heavy, thick with silence and confusion. Rebecca stared at Jaemin, her mind racing. His face was calm, but his eyes dark, sharp, and cold, carried a warning she couldn't ignore. "Leaving?" she repeated. "What are you talking about?" Jaemin slipped on his black jacket, his movements smooth and deliberate. "Someone leaked information about your father's last shipment. Now everyone wants what he was hiding. And since he used you to seal the deal with me, you're now part of that chaos." Rebecca felt her pulse in her ears. "You mean, they'll come after me?" He looked at her, his voice steady but grim. "They already have." The words sent a chill down her spine. He turned toward the door. "You have 10 minutes. Pack light. No heels, no jewelry. Only what you can carry." Rebecca stood frozen. "You're serious?" He didn't even glance back. "Deadly." 10 minutes later, she was in jeans and a simple hoodie, her hair tied up, a small bag slung over her shoulder. Jaemin was already waiting at the elevator, talking to someone in Korean over his earpiece. His tone was clipped, authoritative, all business. When he saw her, he nodded once. "Stay close to me. Don't talk to anyone. Don't look at anyone. I'm not a child, Jaemin." He finally met her gaze, and for a split second, his cold exterior cracked. "No, you're a target." The elevator doors opened. The parking basement was dimly lit, echoing with the hum of engines and faint dripping water. A black SUV waited, tinted, sleek, engine purring. Jaemin opened the passenger door for her. "Get in." Rebecca hesitated. "Where are we going?" "To a safe house outside the city. Somewhere they won't find us." "And who's they exactly?" He gave her a long look. "People your father crossed, and people I used to trust." Her stomach sank. "Used to?" He didn't answer. As the SUV pulled out of the basement, Seoul flashed by in streaks of neon, bars, towers, alleys, alive with people who had no idea two Mafia's children were fleeing for their lives. Rebecca watched him from the corner of her eye. His hands on the wheel were steady, veins visible, his jaw tight. She realized for the first time just how dangerous he looked when he was serious. Yet somehow, she wasn't afraid of him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. He didn't look at her. "Because your father's mess is now mine. And because—" His voice softened. "I don't want you dead." Her chest tightened. "That's not an answer." He turned to her briefly, his eyes catching the streetlights. "Then take it as a promise." An hour later, they reached the outskirts of Seoul, a quiet district lined with mountains and mist. The SUV stopped in front of a secluded villa surrounded by tall bamboo trees. Rebecca got out, hugging herself against the cold night air. "This is your idea of a safe house?" she muttered, glancing around. "It's one of my father's old properties. No one knows it's still active," Jaemin said as he keyed in a code on the steel door. It clicked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Simple but elegant, with wooden floors, tatami mats, and the faint scent of pine. "Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone." "Where are you going?" she asked. "To find out who called you." She frowned. "You were listening?" He looked over his shoulder, unapologetic. "Always." "Unbelievable," she muttered. "You spy on me now?" He stepped closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming. "You're in my world now, Rebecca. And in my world, trust is earned, not given." Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, the air between them grew thick, charged, unspoken. Then he walked out, leaving her staring after him. Hours passed. The clock ticked past midnight. Rebecca paced the room, restless. She thought about Marcus' call, the fear in his voice, the warning. "You're being watched." By who? Her thoughts were interrupted by the distant roar of engines. Then, gunshot. Her heart leapt. She ran to the window. 2 black cars screeched to a stop outside the villa. Men in suits jumped out, guns in hand. "Oh God!" she whispered. Before she could react, the door burst open. Jaemin, breathless, his face smeared with dust and blood. "Down!" he shouted. She ducked as bullets shattered the glass behind her. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her behind the couch as gunfire erupted across the room. "Who are they?" she cried. Americans, he growled. Your father's men, or what's left of them. What? Why would they shoot at me? They think you know where he hid the money. Rebecca's blood ran cold. I don't know anything. I know, he said, reloading calmly. But they don't. When the firing stopped, silence returned, sharp, ringing, deadly. Jaemin peered out, then whispered, Stay here. No, Rebecca. His tone softened, but his eyes were fierce. Please, stay. Something in his voice made her obey. She crouched, trembling, as he slipped out of sight. The next few minutes were chaos. Muffled shouts, footsteps, then silence again. When he finally returned, she saw blood on his sleeve. You're hurt, she said, rushing to him. It's nothing. Don't lie to me. She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the couch. The gash on his arm was deep, bleeding through his shirt. Without thinking, she tore a strip from her hoodie and wrapped it tightly. He watched her quietly, his breath uneven. You shouldn't care this much. Too bad, she muttered, tying the knot. I do. He chuckled softly, his gaze meeting hers. You're impossible. And you're reckless? She shot back, but her voice trembled. When their eyes met again, the room seemed to shrink. Only the two of them, blood, breath, and tension filling the space. His hand lifted slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Rebecca, he whispered, voice low, intimate. If anything happens to me, don't say that. Listen. His tone turned, serious again. There's a USB drive hidden in the piano back at the penthouse. If I don't come back, she gripped his wrist tightly. You're not dying tonight, Jaemin. For the first time, he smiled. Not his calm, polite smile, but something real, fragile. You sound sure. I am. Outside, sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The smell of gunpowder lingered in the air. Rebecca leaned against him, exhaustion catching up. His arm slipped around her, protective, steady. In that silence, something shifted. No longer strangers bound by duty, but two people running from the same darkness. For the first time, she didn't feel like his prisoner. She felt safe. When morning came, Rebecca woke to birds outside and sunlight streaming through the window. Jaemin was gone again. Only his jacket lay folded beside her. Underneath it, a note written in his clean handwriting. Stay hidden. I'll come for you before nightfall. Don't trust anyone. Not even the Americans. Rebecca clutched the note to her chest, her heart torn between fear and something she wasn't ready to name. But outside, engines roared again. And this time, they weren't his.
Hello besties, the deal isn't over, neither is the danger. In episode 2, love faces betrayal and the past comes hunting. Don't miss it. Kindly like, subscribe and share.